This video shows the installation of TeraFlex's 2-door Nebo roof rack main rail kit. It fits all JK 2-door hardtop models. Please watch this video and carefully read through the written instructions before attempting the install. Installation will take about 7 hours for the main rails and the optional 4-piece slat kit. When you open the box for the 2-door Nebo roof rack main rail kit, take the time to organize the hardware. A full list is in the written instructions, however here is a brief overview. There are 2 main rails, a driver and a passenger, a box containing the sport rail brackets, the template for cutting holes, rail badges, the front and rear plastic brackets and hardware bags, which have been separated into 4 corners. Although this video is for the 2-door roof rack, footage from our 4-door roof rack installation video has been incorporated because of the similarities between the 2 installations. Start by removing the hardtop. Unzip the sport bar padding just behind the front passenger seat and remove the 4 bolts and take off the mounting plate. Use a 10mm socket and loosen the 2 screws on the passenger side of the speaker pod. Locate the antenna connector and disconnect it. Pull down gently on the speaker pod until the antenna connector can be removed. Use a 10mm wrench and remove the antenna mounting bolt. Detach the antenna from the mounting plate. Temporarily reinstall the mounting bracket. You will find the templates rolled up inside a cardboard protector. Cut out the templates. These are printed on durable paper and will not easily tear. Start with the right or passenger front. Slide a piece of cardboard under the padding and zip it up. Place the template so you can feel the bracket underneath the padding. The corner aligns with the zipper and the padding seams. Tape the joint template into place or just hold it and cut the slits as indicated. Move to the other side and run through the same process. A sharp cutting tool makes all the difference, and the cardboard really helps give it a clean cut. The antenna bracket is a little tricky and needs to be done in the right order. To give you a visual of what will be happening under the padding, here's how the antenna will line up with the sport bar bracket. There are 2 holes in the bracket, one is for the bolt and the other is to help with the bracket alignment. The open hole will align with the large hole on the base plate. It's easiest to install the satellite antenna before installing the bracket. Feed the connector through the large hole in the antenna bracket, then replace the clip and bolt. Slide the antenna bracket into the cut you made earlier. Install the bolt from below so the lock nut and washer are on the top of the bracket. To make reinstallation of the base plate easier, you want to be able to rotate the antenna bracket. Tighten the lock nut enough that it will hold in place and not flop around, but loose enough that you can rotate it. This bracket does not carry any of the roof rack load, its only purpose is to relocate the antenna bracket. Install the new bracket through the padding and loosely install the 3 remaining bolts. These brackets will remain permanently in place on the sport bar and will support the entire weight of the roof rack and cargo. The satellite antenna plug connector goes through the outside slit and travels down the side of the sport bar. this point, the bolts should all be installed but kept loose so the brackets can be adjusted once the hardtop is back on. Reconnect the satellite antenna plug. Install the left or driver's side bracket. There is no antenna on this side, so only remove the 3 bolts and add the bracket. The rear brackets attach using U-bolts over the sport bar bend. Starting on the right or passenger side, place the template onto the sport bar, align with the zipper and the padding seam as indicated on the template. We notice variations in the pad cover stitching, but the template should get you close enough to install the U-bolts. Unzip the padding and remove the foam. It has 2 clips holding it in place, but they release with firm downward pulls. Measure 4 1/4 inches along the darker seam line from the rear end of the foam and trim it off. Reattach the trimmed foam. Install 2 U-bolts and 2 clamp brackets underneath the padding and through the slits in the pad cover. Zip up the cover to hold the U-bolts and clamp brackets in place. Install the rear passenger bracket, lock washers, and nuts. Tighten until it holds in place, but keep it loose enough that you can still adjust as needed. Move to the left or driver's side and repeat with the driver's side bracket. Move over to the hardtop. Grab a couple of roof mount gaskets out of the parts bag. Pull back the rubber molding a little and slide in the gaskets. This will act as a reference for the templates to rest against and give perfect front to rear orientation. Using the templates cut out earlier, lay the drill guides on the hardtop. The templates are designed to lay out on the outer ribs of the top. Center the template visually for now. We'll get all kinds of exact in a few moments. The templates are pretty long, so it's obvious if they aren't laying parallel to the roof ribs. When you get them close, throw in a couple of pieces of tape to hold them in place. The template has a center line drawn through all the holes you will be drilling. The distance between the center lines in the holes is 43 and 15/16 inches. All you need to do is measure 43 and 15/16 inches at the front and rear drill hole center lines. Do that and know that the templates are perfectly parallel. Since the templates are pushed up against those gaskets, we know the templates are positioned correctly front to rear. Here's a trick that guys with measuring skills use to get improved accuracy from their tape measure. Stretch out the tape and you will read that you are very close to our goal of 43 and 15/16 inches. The end of the tape has some movement in it, so to take our measurements to the next level, try measuring from the 1 or 2 inch line on the dumb end, and ignore the numbers on the smart end of the tape. All we care about is that we have exactly the extra 15/16 inches, so ignore the inches and focus on those tiny little lines. Do it for both the front and the rear center lines. When it is exact, tape the template down and prepare to drill with confidence. Use a center punch and carefully punch each of the 16 holes. You may feel the need to double check your measurements. Feel free to do so. In the written instructions, we mentioned using a drill bit that works great on fiberglass. It's called a brad tip bit. They work amazingly well. Here is a multi-purpose bit, as well as one of the brad bits. But how much difference do they make drilling through fiberglass? The big concern was how much fiberglass would chip with a standard bit. It turns out not much. Then there is the fact that the holes will be covered by a gasket and a mount. Don't get carried away with a ton of pressure as you push through, especially with the standard bits, and you won't have any problems. Drill using an 11/32 inch bit on the large holes and a 1/4 inch bit on the small holes. When you're done, double check that you've drilled all the holes indicated on the template before removing them. Find the bags containing the rail mount hardware. They are organized by corner. We found it's helpful to lay them out beforehand. Keeping things organized helps immensely. If for any reason the parts get mixed together, a list of which part goes where is in the written instructions. Also, the part number is written on each of the rail mounts. Each corner will have a small bag containing the gaskets, bolts, washers, and T-nuts for that corner. On 2 of the long rail mount bolts, place a small washer and then a small O-ring. The large through mounting bolt already has a washer on it, to which you will add one of the large O-rings. These bolts have a design similar to what you have on the OEM top install hardware. They have a thread design that allows for misalignment without crossing the threads. The third long rail mount bolt uses a large washer. There should be 2 washers, 2 small O-rings, and a large O-ring remaining, along with the T-nut and the small flathead bolt. Transfer the rail mounts and hardware to the roof. Remember to keep it all organized. Starting on the front driver's side corner, take the hardtop spacer and from below insert the 2 mounting bolts with the small washers and O-rings. Place the matching gasket on top of the spacer. From beneath the hardtop, insert the 2 bolts through the small holes you drilled earlier. Back on top of the hardtop, a gasket sits on those 2 bolts. You will notice this gasket has a notch, which corresponds to a cutout on the rail mount for the purpose of water drainage. Place the gasket with the notch going towards the center of the hardtop. The mounting bracket goes on after that. The third gasket slides into the rail mount over the final hole, not yet covered by a gasket. Place a small O-ring on top of both of the rail mount bolts. On top of those will go a small washer. And a T-nut will top the whole thing off, but only feed the T-nut on a few threads, just enough to keep the whole thing together. It'll get tightened down later. Finally, drop the large mounting bolt into the bracket. Repeat these steps for all 4 corners. Remember to put the gaskets in between the mounts and the hardtop, and make sure the O-rings get in the right spots. If done right, the gaskets and O-rings will work together to create a watertight seal. Slide the rail mount over the T-nuts, starting at the rear. Push it forward to the front mount. You will need the rear T-nuts as loose as possible to get the rail onto the front rail mount. Slide it forward until all 4 T-nuts are in the rail. Drop the 2 provided T40 Torx tools into the holes and adjust the rails until the tools can be dropped in, removed, and turn the bolt without binding the rail. Centering the rail now will make aligning the sport bar brackets much easier. After the rail is centered, place the remaining large O-ring on the front bracket. Slide a T-nut into the rail. From under the hardtop, insert the rail mount bolt with the large washer, and attach the front rail cap. Tighten down this bolt all the way. Push the T-nut forward and start the small flathead bolt into the T-nut. There's no need to over-tighten this bolt. This bolt will hold the rail in place until we're ready to tighten everything else down. If for any reason you need to adjust the rail's position, simply loosen this bolt. Repeat all these steps for the passenger side. For now, you can leave the rear caps off. We will add those later. After all of the mounting brackets are in place, set the hardtop back onto the Jeep. See how the sport bar brackets line up with each of the mounting brackets. We discovered the sport bar tolerances vary from Jeep to Jeep, so look at the gaps between the sport bar brackets and the mounting brackets. Shims are included in the kit and will be installed between the mount and the bracket to fill the gaps if any. These shims will help reduce top warpage when the through bolts are installed and tightened. Tighten the through mounting bolts enough to hold the sport bar brackets in place until the sport bar bracket can be secured. On the front brackets, slide a 13mm open-end wrench in between the hardtop and the sport bar. Snug up the bolt tight enough so that the bracket won't shift when we remove the top to final tighten the other bolts. Move to the rear and adjust the brackets up into position. Tighten the through bolt as you hold the bracket in place. Since you can adjust these, you should be able to make these tight with the mounting bracket. Once the rear brackets are positioned correctly, tighten down the nuts on the U-bolts to 13 foot-pounds. Carefully remove the hardtop so the brackets aren't disturbed during removal. Final tighten all the sport bar bolts on the front brackets to 14 foot-pounds. Remember to tighten the bolt under the antenna bracket. If you are using any shims, peel off the bagging and place them onto the brackets. Make sure you leave the center hole clear. Place the provided rubber caps onto the U-bolt ends. Using the provided 4mm Allen tool, final tighten the rail mounts. We place the badge about 5.5 inches from the rear of the main rail. If you are not adding the optional slats, then put on the rear rail caps, otherwise leave them off. Once again, lift the hardtop onto the vehicle. With the top sitting in place, drop the torque tool into the rails and start each of the 4 mounting bolts and tighten them up. These are the only additional bolts you will ever need to loosen for hardtop removal. The rails are held in place by the through top brackets, making the rails the perfect lift point for top removal. Reinstall the factory hardtop hardware and you've completed the installation of TeraFlex's 2-door Nebo roof rack main rail kit. The optional slat kit for the 2-door roof rack contains 4 slats and all the hardware needed to install. This can be added to the roof rack without removing the top, so we will need to remove the end caps. You can skip this step on a new install, but let's assume that we are adding slats to a previously installed Nebo roof rack. Remove the small flathead bolt on the top and the long bracket mount bolt with the large washer from below. Slide a T-nut into each of the outer edges of the slats. The slat side mounts are easiest to install at an angle and then to push/roll it onto the slat. Loosely install 2 of the flathead bolts into the previously installed T-nuts. Repeat for both ends of all the slats. The slats are shorter than the rail spacing, so the mounts can be pushed in or pulled out to adjust the spacing. For a quick gauge to find the correct fitment of the slats, start with the assembly sitting above the rails, press the side mounts together until the slat drops down between the rails. Slide in a T-nut before the slat starts into the rail. Loosely install a flathead bolt into each of the T-nuts. Slide the slat further into the rail and add the second T-nut and flathead bolt onto each end. Move the slats into position, and once the slats are installed, you can space them out to whatever your needs may be. When you're finished, tighten all the bolts, reinstall the end caps, and you're all done with the slat installation.